All right, let's dive right into the Broadhaven Triangle. We're going deep on this one, folks.
Oh,
You guys sent in some seriously fascinating firsthand accounts and reports, all centered around this wave of bizarre events that hit this little village in Wales back in 1977. And it really gives off those classic Bermuda Triangle vibes. You know what I
oh
mean?
yeah, totally.
A small, unassuming village suddenly becomes a hotspot for UFO sightings and mysterious encounters. It's the kind of story that just grabs you and doesn't let go.
It really is. And you know what's really interesting about this case in particular? It wasn't just like a one-time thing. The sheer number of reports, the different kinds of encounters people were having, and all of this happening over several months really makes it stand out.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't a blip on the radar, that's for sure. And it all started, as so many of these stories do, with a group of school children. They reported seeing this silver disc landing near their school.
Oh, wow.
And one of the kids, David Davies, he said it was a silver spaceship, shiny like a star. Can you even imagine at that age seeing something like that?
I can't even imagine. I'd be speechless.
Totally. And get this, it wasn't just a quick glimpse either. A whole bunch of kids in this group gave remarkably consistent descriptions, even mentioning a figure coming out of the craft.
No way, really.
Yeah. And another child, Gaynor Sunderland, described it as, and I quote, a man about 4 feet tall wearing a silver suit, shiny like tinfoil. It's hard to dismiss those details, especially coming from kids.
It really is. When you hear those kind of details
Mhm.
from multiple witnesses, especially young ones, it starts to make you think, there's got to be something to this.
Right. It makes you wonder what they really saw that day. And it wasn't an isolated incident either. There were reports popping up all over the place about these silver discs and the way they moved. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Yeah, I was reading about that. Witnesses described them being incredibly fast and agile. Like they were moving in ways that just shouldn't be possible. One report I came across was from a local farmer. He said it was moving like a gnat, darting back and forth and shooting straight up into the air.
That's what.
And he even said it was completely silent. No engine noise, no whooshing sound, nothing. Which, adds a whole other layer of strangeness to it all.
Silent and making these insane movements. Yeah, that's spooky. It makes you wonder what kind of technology could possibly do that. Like,
Right.
I mean, are we talking something beyond our understanding here?
Possibly, yeah. It's hard to even speculate when you're dealing with something so far outside our normal experience.
Exactly. Now, along with the UFO sightings, we also have these encounters with mysterious beings, and these sound a bit more, well, unsettling.
Yeah, definitely a different vibe. The descriptions we have of these beings, often in silver suits and helmets, that's where we start to see a real sense of fear in the reports. Like, people were genuinely terrified.
That's understandable.
One witness, a hotel owner named Rosa Granville, she described feeling totally paralyzed with fear during an encounter. She said, "It was like I was frozen in place, unable to move or speak."
Oh, wow. That's straight out of a nightmare. I mean, seeing a strange object in the sky, that's one thing. But having this kind of close encounter with something you can't explain, that's got to be terrifying.
Yeah, no kidding. And it wasn't just Rosa either. This feeling of fear, of unease, it pops up again and again in the reports of people who had encounters with these beings.
So it wasn't just close encounters vibes, more like something out of a horror movie?
Definitely. There's definitely a darker element at play here, a feeling of the unknown that seemed to really tap into people's deepest fears.
It's giving me chills just thinking about it. Can you imagine what it must have been like for the people living in Broadhaven at the time? This quiet little village suddenly becomes this hub of weird activity, the center of media attention, and researchers and investigators are descending upon them. It must have been absolute chaos.
Oh, absolutely. I can only imagine. Yeah, their lives were totally turned upside down. Can you imagine? Your peaceful little village is suddenly making headlines all over the place for these bizarre events,
Hmm.
and it even got the attention of the government. We have records from the Ministry of Defense that show they actually investigated some of the reports. Yeah. Especially the ones that they thought might be a national security risk.
Wait, really? The government got involved? That's kind of crazy. So did they ever figure out what was going on?
Well, that's where it gets even more interesting. The Ministry of Defense files, even after all these years, they're still heavily redacted, like whole sections blacked out. They did conclude that there was no threat to national security, but they never really gave a clear explanation for what people were seeing.
So basically, a big ol' mystery. And no wonder people are still fascinated by the Broadhaven Triangle all these years later.
Right. It's become a part of local folklore.
Yeah.
And think about it. Growing up in Broadhaven, hearing these stories from your parents, your grandparents, Knowing that something extraordinary happened right there in your backyard, it must really shape how people see the place.
That's a good point. It makes you wonder how the community was affected in the long run. Were there people who totally believed in all the UFO stuff and others who were like, nope, nothing happened here?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You had a whole range of reactions. Some people loved the attention. They saw it as a good thing, even a boost for tourism, with people coming to check out the UFO capital. But then you had others who felt like it brought a lot of unwanted attention and just wanted to forget the whole thing ever happened.
Yeah, I bet it was a pretty divisive experience for the town.
For sure. And for some people, it was life-changing. I mean, imagine seeing something that just completely shatters your understanding of the world. Some people became diehard believers in extraterrestrial life, while others became even more skeptical.
It really shows you how differently people process the unknown. We're all searching for answers, whether it's through science or maybe something a little more out there.
Yeah, and that's what I think makes the Broadhaven case so captivating. It forces us to confront the limits of what we know
Yeah.
and to consider possibilities that might be beyond our current understanding.
It's not just about some lights in the sky, is it? It's about questioning reality itself and our place in the universe. Reading through all these reports, one thing that really struck me was how many witnesses talked about feeling this sense of otherness during their encounters. Like there was this presence that was beyond our normal senses.
That's really interesting, and it's something that pops up a lot in these kinds of stories, these accounts of unexplained events.
Mm.
It goes beyond just what people saw. It's something deeper, more primal, more intuitive. It's almost like these encounters awakened a different kind of awareness, a sense that there's something truly alien out there.
You always hear people say, I want to believe, and I think that really resonates with cases like Broadhaven. It speaks to our natural curiosity, our desire for something beyond the ordinary.
I think it goes even deeper than that. It's about acknowledging just how vast the universe is and the possibility that we might not be alone.
It really makes you look up at the night sky with a different perspective, doesn't it?
Exactly. Every unexplained event, every strange encounter adds another piece to the puzzle. And it encourages us to keep asking questions, to investigate, to keep searching for answers.
We spent a lot of time talking about the events themselves, but I'm curious about the long-term impact of Broadhaven. Did what happened in 1977 lead to any specific research initiatives or changes in the way UFO sightings are investigated?
Well, Broadhaven didn't directly lead to major changes in UFO research protocols, but it definitely added to the growing body of evidence and firsthand accounts that researchers are still looking into today. It really highlighted how important it is to collect eyewitness testimony, document any physical evidence, and analyze patterns in these unexplained phenomena.
So even though there wasn't an official explanation for what happened in Broadhaven, it still had a pretty big impact on the community and maybe even on the field of UFO research.
Definitely, Broadhaven is a great example of how much we still don't know about the world around us, and that the pursuit of knowledge and understanding should never stop.
Well said. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, let's turn it over to you, the listener. If you were in Broadhaven in 1977, how do you think you would react to all of this?
Would you have been caught up in the excitement? Would you have felt a sense of wonder and possibility? Or would you have approached it with a more skeptical eye, trying to find a rational explanation for what seemed impossible?
It's a good question to think about. And it gets at the heart of what we're doing here today. We're not just retelling a story. We're inviting you to engage with the mystery, to grapple with the unknown, and to draw your own conclusions.
That's the beauty of taking a deep dive, isn't it? It's all about the journey of discovery, the exploration of new ideas, and expanding our understanding of the world, both the things we can see and the things we can't.
It's wild to think about how this tiny village, Broadhaven, became such a focal point for all these bizarre events. It makes you wonder about those other places known for strange happenings, like Roswell or the Bermuda Triangle. Do you think there's something that actually attracts these unexplained events to specific spots?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Researchers have been scratching their heads over that one for decades. There are theories out there, of course. Some suggest that certain locations might have unique electromagnetic properties, or maybe there are geographical features that somehow interact with forces we don't understand, almost like creating some kind of portal.
Whoa, like a gateway to another dimension?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But then there's also the idea that it might be more about our perception, like once a place gets a reputation for being weird or paranormal,
Right.
it might attract people who are already inclined to see things that way.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. The more we focus on a particular location as being a hotbed for strange activity, the more likely we are to notice and report anything out of the ordinary.
Mm.
and that just reinforces the reputation even more.
It's like that saying, we see what we want to see. But even with that in mind, it's tough to just dismiss all the reports from Broadhaven, you know? Multiple people describing the same things, often with really specific details that match up. It seems like more than just coincidence or mass hysteria.
Oh, for sure. And that's the real challenge when you're dealing with the unexplained. How do you stay skeptical, but also keep an open mind? How do you figure out what's a genuine anomaly and what's just misperception or tricks of the mind?
It's a tough balance to strike, for sure. We don't want to jump to conclusions, but we also don't want to completely shut ourselves off from the possibility that there might be things out there we just don't understand yet.
Right. And that's what I find so compelling about the Broadhaven Triangle. It forces us to confront the limits of what we know and to really consider possibilities that go beyond our current understanding.
It reminds us that there are still mysteries in the world waiting to be solved.
And maybe, just maybe, in trying to solve those mysteries, we might learn something new about ourselves and our place in the grand scheme of things.
Well said. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Broadhaven Triangle, we want to leave you with this. What would you believe if you had been there? Would you embrace the possibility of the unknown? Or would you search for a more down-to-earth explanation? The answer is ultimately up to you. It depends on your own way of seeing the world and how willing you are to explore what might be possible, even if it challenges everything you thought you know. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the unexplained. Until next time, keep looking up and keep those minds open.